Okay. All right. At this table, take you.
I would say Amazon's delivery tracking system.
You like?
Yes.
Okay. And why do you like it?
It's efficient and it makes the whole seller-customer relation much more exact.
Okay.
Maybe it's not that universal.
Okay.
It doesn't apply normal process.
Okay. Okay. And what do you dislike? Is there a service you dislike? Or are you a happy person and you like everything?
Oh wait.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe do you have a service that you dislike?
I bought once a product from TV,
Okay.
and I gave my number,
Okay.
and they called me all the time for promotion.
Ah, yes. Bad idea. Bad idea. Okay. So you were being harassed all the time. Okay. Excellent. From this table. Yes.
Free Wi-Fi.
Free Wi-Fi. Okay. Why do you like it?
When you go to a cafeteria or a theater or enterprises that are working with this service, you can have access to free Wi-Fi.
So it's convenient. Okay. And it works.
It's fast.
And anything you dislike? You haven't found anything? It's a very good sign. The Greek economy must be doing very well. What do you do? Online advertising? You don't like? Okay. And why do you dislike it?
Mainly it is obligatory.
Ah, okay.
I can pass it so I can.
Okay. Okay. Now, this is just a very quick exercise, and unfortunately, I cannot take everybody's kind of likes and dislikes, but it's a very good exercise. So, one of the first things you should do if you're working with an SME or you're an SME yourself is think about what you like and dislike. Why would you want to treat your customers differently from what you like or dislike? And it's really worth thinking about it. What makes the difference between good service and bad service? By chance, I have the Amazon picture here. It's not by chance because whenever I give these workshops around the world, Amazon's always one of the good examples. Because they think about this a lot, they work on this a lot, they pay attention to the details. So, what are some of the things which make it a success of a service? First of all, they have to be relevant and effective. For example, one of the problems with online advertising is that it's often not offering something which you are interested in. If it was only offering things that you were interested in, maybe it would be less of a problem. It has to be consistent. So if you go to your morning coffee place and one day they give you fantastic service, the next day they give you terrible service, it will be very complicated. Because what happens is we have certain expectations. If we expect service to be terrible, then we lower our expectations and we say, okay, well, it's terrible, but that's just the way it is. We have fantastic service one day, and we really expect it the next day to be fantastic as well. Easy to use. It was already mentioned when we talked about the Internet of Things. The next one is a little bit complicated. I mean, it's a little bit design speak, but we all have expectations about the way something should work. So, for example, if you want to open a door and you see a handle on the door, you expect to have to move the handle to open the door. If all of a sudden you have to not move it down, but you have to push it, even though it looks like a handle which you have to take, you have a problem. And it's the same thing with services. People have an expectation of how things are supposed to work, so try and match that. Value for money, whether it's free, that's the ultimate value for money, or whether you ask for a fair price. The next one is also important, and not something that you think about a lot, is contextual. What does it mean? It means that there's a huge difference between the service that you offer to somebody who is in a crisis. So for example, if you are in an insurance company and your client just had an accident, that client is stressed and is panicking, you should be offering a service which is good for that client at that moment. And that's not the same as when the client is coming to your office, he has lots of time, sit down with you, give him advice, etc., etc. So you always have to think about that customer. What are they, in what state of mind are they? Are they ready to receive my services? Are they anxious? Are they relaxed? Depends on the context. The next one is also from the IT context. People want to be able to get out of things. So for example, I was flying on Ryanair yesterday. I booked additional parking because I had forgotten to mention that I needed some parking. I booked the parking, went all the way through, gave my credit card details, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden I did not receive the voucher. There was a very good reason why I did not receive the voucher, but I could not contact anybody at Ryanair. They had a telephone number which was somewhere in the UK. I wasn't Belgium. Okay, I called the UK and I came onto a number, and the number said, "We are open during office hours, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday." Which is terrible service. I mean, it's terrible service for when you are offering, when you're flying clients all over the world all days, then you should be able to service them every single day. And last but not least, remember that I said we were going to talk about the brain, but also the heart. It's very important that you appeal to emotions. When you go through life, when you leave the workshop today, and you look at the services you receive, try and see how much of your reaction is emotional and how much of your reaction is rational. I was talking about the hairdresser earlier. I don't go to the hairdresser. Very easy, but some people need to go to the hairdresser. And the hairdresser, you go. And the hairdresser, well, at the end of the day, what does a hairdresser do? They cut and they make curls or whatever, and they wash your hair. It's the basic functions are pretty much the same everywhere. And the reason why you like one hairdresser more than another probably has a lot to do with emotional aspects. And so don't forget the emotional aspects. Okay, what are we going to do in this workshop? I'm going to give you some theory. I'm going to give you a case to work on. We're going to work on this together. And I'm also going to give you some best practices. It's also called next practices. Why? Because there's a big discussion on right now that you should not really be using best practices, because best practices is only the best things that people are doing today, and you should really be doing what's good tomorrow. So you should use next practices rather than best practices. You will see that in this workshop we're going to keep things simple. You don't have any sophisticated digital devices, you don't have, it's not interactive learning, it's all you have is paper, some post-its, some markers, that's all you have. And we have done this on purpose. We have done this on purpose. The reason is that you want to be able to do this with any SME, anywhere. And I have done this with very small startup companies in very small rooms with only pen and paper, and you can still apply these techniques. Okay, so maybe what is service design? First explain what it is we're going to be talking about. The definition generally accepted is that it's designed for experiences that engage people. So it's not about just thinking, but it's also about feeling, it's about doing, through different touch points. I don't know whether you're familiar with what touch points are, but for example, if you have a phone, you have a smartphone. For many services today, the smartphone will be one of the touch points. Free Wi-Fi, one of the touch points, one of the ways you can enroll in free Wi-Fi will be through your smartphone. But you can probably also do it through your computer, and maybe you can do it through a branch or through an office, etc. Design, it's a very long slide, a lot of text. You will get the presentation, and I think you will get it electronically, so don't worry about writing too many things down. But the big mistake people make sometimes about design is to think that it's only about beautiful things. So designing a nice scarf, like you're wearing, that can be design. And so many people think design is about designing pretty things. But design is also about designing things that work, that function, that do what people want it to do. So for example, I have a remote control to move the slides. It can be pretty or not. We can have a long discussion about this. But the most important thing is that when I press this button, the slide moves. So that's a very important aspect. And you see many things in this world, and I'm sure in Greece it's the same, that are very pretty, that are totally useless. Somebody was talking about Alpha Bank. The banks have been spending a lot of money making beautiful branches, but the service is not necessarily better. So maybe they would have been better to spend a little bit more money on improving the service and less on making the branches pretty. There are many levels of design. Don't worry about this. I mean, my ambition is not to turn you into designers in a day. That's not going to work. But just so that you understand, a lot of the people think that design is all about, does it look attractive? Does it look pretty? And they say, beautiful design. No, design is also about, does it work? And does it fit within the strategy? So if you are going to work with an SME, the SME may be an old grandmother who makes fantastic jam, fig jam. And so if you are going to design something for her, you need to design something that works for her. If she wants to start a company that will sell fig jam all over the world, you have to make something that will work for her. Okay? What's very important in service design is it has to be desirable, so people should want it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it. Even if you are a public service still needs to be accepted by the citizens. So it needs to be desirable. It needs to be viable. So behind it, you need a business model that works. And it needs to be feasible on the technology side. A lot of the mistakes that people make today is to focus on the technology. They say, if we have fantastic technology, we will be able to do something for our clients. It's not true. It's not true because most of the technology today is available. When Apple makes a new iPhone, they buy most of the technology. Most of the technology they buy. They buy companies that have that technology. So their focus is not so much on the technology, they focus on what will people want. And then they try to make that with the available technology. Okay. Why service design? By the way, the most important question that you can ask in design is why. If you remember only one thing about today, I make it very easy for you. If you remember only one thing, it's to ask the question, why? Why? Okay, that's a very important question. So one of the things that we are noticing, and I think it's also true in Greece, is you can keep working harder and harder and harder and harder, doing things the way you did them yesterday, but only doing them twice as much, and it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. So there is a need to rethink the way you are doing things. And you need to do this in a smart way. This is an example I like to use. I don't know whether you have an opinion on the subject. So you see a yellow convertible Porsche, I think, on the left-hand side. You see one of those big SUV Volvos on the right-hand side. And I ask you the question, and I'm sure you know this, you look like a man who knows these kind of things. Which one is safe?
Well, I guess the SUV.
The SUV, big, huh? Oh, okay, okay. Does anybody have a different opinion? Yes. You have a different opinion? Okay. And which one do you think is safer? Because you have one at home?
I love it.
And so why do you think it's safer?
Because brakes is better.
A bit louder, please.
The brakes are better.
Everything stronger. Everything not passive is better.
Everything not passive is better. This man has been reading. So, in the USA, they have something called the National Highway Safety Authority, which is the supreme body kind of looking at road safety. And they did an extensive test with all kinds of cars, and they tested them on safety. And they found that out of these two, the safest car is the Porsche. And precisely because of the reason that you mentioned. We all have been taught that safety means you need a big car, you need big bumpers, you need a lot of steel, etc. That way you are protected. But in safety, the most important thing is to avoid the accident. Not what happens when you are in the accident, but to avoid the accident. That's the way you can take away 95% of the risk. So we are all focused because we have seen advertisements, commercials about cars crashing into walls and crash test dummies going back and forth and everything exploding, etc., etc. We think, you need a big car. While in fact what you need is you need a car which is very agile and you can quickly avoid the incident or you can brake. So it's really a question of how you ask the question. So if you look at the cars in before 2000, there was a big race to make the bumper bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know if you remember these older cars, but they had bigger and bigger bumpers and then after the year 2000, the car maker said, no, we don't need to worry mostly about passive safety, but we need to worry about active safety. How can we avoid the accident? And that's what you see in cars today. They are full of sensors, they are full of all kinds of things which allow you to avoid the accident. Now, why do I give this example? This is not a commercial for Porsche. There's a very good reason to give this example, is to show you that if you look at a problem in a different way, you will come up with different solutions. And that's basically what you need to try to do. Say, what is the real problem we're trying to avoid? What do we need to solve? And then what is the best solution? And in the case of most services, there is only one boss, and it's not the boss in the company, but it's the customer, it's the user. And that you should really never forget, because they have options. And these days they have more and more options. If you don't like your local bookstore, you go on Amazon and you buy whatever you like. If you don't like your local hi-fi store, you have many different options. So there is pressure from the users. They are becoming more critical, they have increasing choice. There's pressure on value for money. I don't have to explain that to you. When the economic situation is difficult, you become even more sensitive to price. They are active participants in the solution provided. This is also something that we tend to forget. When you offer a service, for example, you have a restaurant. If you have a restaurant and the customer comes in and he is very happy, he's delighted because he has just won a contract or he has received his degree, he's happy, everything is going well, it will be much easier to serve that customer than if the customer is grumpy, he's in a bad mood, etc., etc. So we as customers, we determine the quality of the service. We are participants in the service. And they have an increasing number of access channels. But there's also pressure from the supply side. Companies have to become more and more efficient. It's about the bottom line. It's about making money. And so fitting the solution to the market, to the customer, is a big challenge on that side as well. So these are reasons why organizations are looking at service design and service design techniques. How do we do it? Very important step. You validate these prototypes with users, and then you try and improve them all the time. So it's an iterative process. If you look at Samsung, the first smartphone they launched was, if you look at it today, it was probably not very good. But they knew that they were going to improve it all the time. Okay? And that's what most companies today do. They say, okay, we will not have the perfect product from the start. We will have the essential features at the start, but we know that we will be able to improve afterwards. You mentioned the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things for the moment is quite terrible. It's very interesting and nice, etc., but it's not good. The wearables are not ideal. All kinds of things are not perfect about the Internet of Things right now. But companies who are active in the Internet of Things know that these things will evolve, and their customers know this as well. What are very important elements of service design, and you will notice this today, it's very human-centered. So we are continuously thinking about the customers, but also the stakeholders in the process. It's co-designed. So we are here in 4 groups. That's precisely the idea behind service design, is that you do things together. It's, and this is a design term, it's evidenced. You try and as quickly as possible build a solution, something which is concrete, which you can test with users, and it's agile. How many of you have heard of the term agile in software development? 1? 2? You are in software development or IT, or no? But you know a little bit about it. Okay, you're a developer. So what is the explain to the group what is agile? Explain it in Greek. It will be much easier for everyone.
Είναι ένας τρόπος για να αναπτύξεις ένα project, όχι με τον παραδοσιακό τρόπο, όπως είναι ένας σκέφτεσαι τι θα γράψεις, πώς θα γράψεις. Το μοντέλο καταράκτη, το ξέρετε. Ας πούμε, κάνεις το σχεδιασμό, σχεδιάζεις το προϊόν, το testing και τέλος. Και το στέλνεις στον πελάτη μετά από 1 μήνα, ας πούμε. Το agile είναι ακριβώς το ότι, ας πούμε, το φτιάχνεις το γρήγορα, κάνεις τα rapid development. Φτιάχνεις το γρήγορα και το στέλνεις στον πελάτη να το δει. Και μετά ξανά το ίδιο, επαναλαμβάνεται συνεχώς. Δεν το κάνεις, ας πούμε, το project σε 1 μήνα και μετά το στέλνεις. Και μετά τρως το fail, ας πούμε. Συνέχεια. Βάζεις γρήγορα feedback.
Okay. Is that clear? Did he explain it well? You think so? You're not convinced.
Okay, I know that adapting at time maybe from the development world, but my sense, I don't know, I think that's also he explains based on the development process
Okay.
and stuff. But I think that they also have information in different areas.
Yes.
As far as
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And this is one example. So the idea behind Agile is rather than trying to do everything at the same time, is you cut it up into small pieces, and then within those pieces you have cycles where you build, and then you test and you see whether it works, etc., etc. The reason why Agile was invented was because people were noticing that the big software projects were taking way too long. It was just too slow. The traditional way of developing software took a very long time. So they said, no, we need to be able to do it faster. And that's also one of the things that you try and do through service design, is you try and develop your services faster. Now, this is a chart that Christina knows very well. And in terms of best practices, when you try and apply service design, and especially if you are going to work with SMEs, try and think about where the SME is today. If it's a very traditional family enterprise which has never done anything new or innovative, then think about what kind of concepts will work with them and what kind of concepts you may want to introduce later. So think about to what extent the companies that you are working with are ready to go for service design. So let's look at the case we will be working on today. So the first step is problem definition, defining the problem. So, and this may sound like a very obvious thing to do. It sounds, when I explain this to people, they say, well, why is this a problem? I would say 90% of my clients, when I first talk with them, they don't know what their problem is. They have not really defined what their problem is. So if you can, there's a very famous quote from Einstein that says 99% of the solution is in defining the problem. If you are very clear on what problem you are trying to solve, the solution will be that much easier to find. In most big organizations, if you go to the executive team, and I have done this, you interview every single member of the executive team, and every single member says something different. And so one of the things that you have to do if you are working with an SME, make sure that you get the key people from the SME around one table and try and define what the problem is. And try to be as clear as possible about that problem. What do we want to achieve? Who do we want to achieve it for? And why? Again, this question, why? So, for example, you may go to an SME and they say, we want to go international. And then you ask, why? Why do you want to go international? Is it because the CEO of the company wants to be able to travel to different locations? Why? If you are not having success in Greece, why would you have success outside of Greece? So really think about what problem you're trying to solve and why. Also try and think about what you want to know. What do you know? And what don't you know? Now, many of the companies I'm working with, especially the large organizations, their first reaction to any problem is, we need to analyze. We need to analyze. And we have to analyze and analyze and analyze and analyze and analyze till we know what the solution is. The problem is, a lot of the solutions don't come through analysis. We are, through our education, I'm sure it is the same in Greece, we are trained to be analytical. We think as long as we analyze a problem, we keep on analyzing and analyzing and analyzing, we will come to the truth, and the truth will provide the solution. Unfortunately, that's very often not the case. And so, if you are in a business, and let's say you are in a Greek business, and you have this fantastic concept around a new product based on olives, just an example, and you want to export to Germany. Will you ever be 100% sure that your product is going to work in Germany? No. You can do all of the analysis in the world. You can do 500 surveys of all the Germans. You can look at all of the analysis of all kinds of similar products, etc., etc. Still, you will not be certain that it will work. Why not? By definition, you have a new product. You're talking about the future. Nobody has a crystal ball. If anybody in the room has a crystal ball, please share it with me. I will pay a lot of money if you have a crystal ball. But we don't know anything about the future. We don't know anything about the future. So if you're working with an SME and they say, wow, we are not quite sure that this will work. We need to do a little bit more analysis. We need to do this survey and we need to talk to these people, etc., etc. And if they keep on doing this for months and months and months and years and years and years, stop. Stop. You will never have certainty. Never. So that's the quote by Voltaire. Certainty is absurd. Nobody knows. On the eve of the presentation of the new iPhone, whatever the number is, the people at Apple are not certain that it will work. They don't. They don't. And then the next day, either people are incredibly excited, or they say, not very interested. We developed a toolkit for the Flemish region, and so that's one of the techniques you could use with SMEs, is to provide them with a simple toolkit which they can use. We have a new version of this which is available online for free, and we'll give you the references at the end of the presentation. Some examples of things we did. This is a car sharing service to take young people to festivals. And for example, when the company came to us, they said, well, we want to develop a mobile application. And it seemed very logical to say, yes, let's do for young people going to festivals, yes, we need a mobile application. But then when we started talking to young people, at least in Belgium, they said, well, really, we don't worry about how we will get to the concert. Our first concern, the most important thing we care about, is getting the ticket. And as soon as we have the ticket, then we say, whoa, it's on the other side of the country, how will I get there? But it's true, in terms of the way they approach the problem, they are not thinking about mobility first, but they're saying, now, whatever, Beyonce, whatever is your favorite artist, is coming to Belgium or Greece, I need to go. Let's get a ticket quick, because within 10 seconds everything is sold out. And then once I have a ticket, I say, will my parents be able to bring me? Can I go with friends? Etc., etc., etc. So we actually told this company, don't make a mobile application. If you have money, buy advertising space when people have a ticket. So as soon as people have confirmation that they have a ticket, then you're there with your ad and you say, if you need a mobility solution, come to us. You see the difference in approaching a problem. Okay. What we would like to do with you today, and it's very important that you understand this, is we would like you to design a service or service package that could be supplied by a public regional authority, and that will stimulate, support, and guide existing and starting small companies. And it should help them apply service design, design thinking to their business and to their innovation initiatives. Okay? So that's what we will be working on today. So you really have to start from the needs of the small business owner And you have to think across all the different channels and touch points. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to stimulate growth, employment, development, innovation, etc. Is this clear? Yes? You understand what you need to do? Are you ready to do it? Yes? Was this what you were thinking you were going to do today? Do you want to switch teams? Are you not happy with it? Because you're going to be working with the people around your table? So this is your final chance to switch? Okay. Okay. So, the first thing you need to do, as I said, is you need to understand, map what it is you're trying to, what problem you're trying to solve. So, the kind of overview we use, but you can have different ones, is you first try to define the purpose. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose of the solution? Then you try and define how does it fit within the organization strategy. You try and understand the target users. You try and understand the competition. You try and understand the ecosystem. Now, I don't know whether you are familiar with the term ecosystem. No? I will explain it. Most of the products and services which are being launched today don't function in isolation. They always have links towards other services. The best example of this, or one of the better examples of this, was iTunes. When iTunes was launched, it relied on record companies or music companies providing the music. It relied on either Apple or other people producing players which were able to use iTunes. It relied on computer manufacturers allowing iTunes to be installed on computers, etc. So most of the services which are being provided today have an ecosystem. I don't know how it is in Thessaloniki, but in Brussels, for example, when you enter Brussels now, you can see not only where the parkings are, but you can see how many places are still available in every single parking. Now, the reason why this works is because there is open data interchange, and so people have agreed that they will share this kind of data. It's the same principle which allows you to see on Google Maps, you know, where the buses are and where you can take the bus, and maybe even how many minutes till the next bus, etc., etc. So these are ecosystems. So they're different providers that all provide a piece of the service. And it's because all of these providers are present that you get a good service. Okay? Then the challenges that you see, the opportunities that you see, the major insights that you have, what have you seen, what do you know about your target users or about your market that is going to be particularly relevant for your solution, and then the context and constraints. So what are the constraints of that you will need to take into account? So I have simplified this grid a little bit because I know you cannot do everything in a day. And I will ask you to take a sheet on your table. You should all have sheets on your table. Just draw 4 boxes. And in the group, think about the purpose of the solution, the insights. So at this stage, obviously, because you haven't done any market research or any interviews, it's what you think. It's what you think for the insights. The target users, who will be the key target users of your service. You may want to, for your solution, decide to focus on a segment of the SMEs. Who knows? And the ecosystem. So what could be elements of the ecosystem which you think are important for your solution?
Could we go back to the
Of course. Okay? So maybe take 2 minutes to draw the boxes. If you could quickly draw the boxes, and then I will put the objective back. Just very quickly make the boxes. Make the boxes quickly, then I can change the slide. Yeah, the boxes. I noticed that people are not comfortable with drawing. It's going to be very important today, huh? Don't worry about it's not a beauty contest. It's not a beauty contest. Okay? Make sure you leave space inside the box. Make sure that you leave space. Okay. You know what you should go Okay. All right. So, if you thought drawing the boxes was complicated, wait till the rest of the work. Okay, we'll go back to the objective. So this is your objective. Okay? So I'll give you about 20 minutes to fill this in. You have about 20 minutes. Okay? Cap is not on this camera. It's a very clearly defined problem, and the solution is to do this. Very easy. Okay? The vaguer I make my purpose, stimulate development, the more difficult it will be for me to come up with the solution, because it can go in all kinds of directions. But again, don't worry about the fact that initially your definition is quite broad, because you will be able to refine it over time. Now, just if I may, in terms of technique, one of the natural tendencies we have in meetings, in groups, is we want to discuss, we want to talk, right? In a session like this, please talk, but also write. And why is writing important? Because as soon as you write something on paper, let's say, for example, you felt that it needed to be in the agricultural area. As soon as you put agriculture on paper, your mind frees up to think about other things. If all you're doing is thinking about agriculture, you're just trying to convince these three other guys that we should be working on agriculture. And that's not a good discussion to have. And so, in fact, it's a classic technique. If you have a workshop, and there is one particularly difficult person who is always saying, yes, but this cannot be, this cannot be, this cannot be. Many people who lead workshops would try and squash that person, shut him up, make sure that he doesn't talk anymore, because the reverse is let him talk in the beginning. Write everything that he's saying. Make sure that he feels or she feels somebody has captured everything I think. And then that person becomes free to and open to other ideas. We are, as human beings, we all need to feel loved and liked and respected and everything else. And so that part of the dynamic is that when you have an opinion, you like that opinion to be taken into account. And writing it down is one of the best ways to take the opinion into account. Okay? That's just a side note in terms of group dynamic. So please, also in the rest of the workshop, don't hesitate to write. As I explained here, if afterwards you don't think it's the right idea anymore, just scratch it out or take it off or throw it in the garbage can, whatever. Okay. So, we know what we will be working on today. We will also work with personas. Who has worked with personas here? Excellent. Can you explain what personas are? She's going to explain what personas are.
English or
Whatever you feel most comfortable with.
ουσιαστικά πρόκειται για κάποια αρχέτυπα κάποιων ατόμων οι οποίοι χρησιμοποιούν κάποιες, θα συμμετέχουν σε όλο αυτό το συγκεκριμένο service που πας να δείξει. Δηλαδή δεν είναι κάποια πρόσωπα τα οποία είναι αληθινά. Απλά χρησιμοποιώντας αυτά προσπαθείς να μπεις σε κάποιους συγκεκριμένους ρόλους για να αντιληφθείς ποιες είναι οι ανάγκες τους, τι σκέφτονται και τα συναισθήματά τους συγκεκριμένη στιγμή. Δηλαδή, αν είναι κάποιος ο οποίος είναι ένας σχεδιαστής στην όλη διαδικασία, ποια θα είναι το δικό του το input ή ποιες θα είναι οι δικές του σκέψεις στην όλη διαδικασία. Ουσιαστικά αυτό που προσπαθείς να κάνεις είναι να δεις τι σκέφτεται και ποιες είναι οι ανάγκες του και το πώς μπορείς να βοηθήσεις.
Okay, is that clear? I didn't understand, but I was assuming that.
That's why I'm proposing
Good.
we talk in English.
No problem. I think it's important that the message comes across. So what we will be doing is we will be defining personas because it helps you, if you want to design a service, it helps you to have a specific person in mind. So let's say, for example, that I was going to ask you to develop a solution for the elderly, for old people, let's say a healthcare solution for the elderly. It would be much easier for you to think of this service if you think about your parents or your grandparents than it would be if you just think about all the old people in the world. Just in terms of the way we think and design, it's always much easier to design for a specific person than it is to design for a segment. Okay, and it's one of the reasons why we use personas. We will come back on these personas. Don't worry about the names, etc. You'll get to give your own names. One of the first things we need to do is we need to think about persona dimensions. So if we think about the target users, so for example here we have target users in the agricultural sector. If we think about these users, how will they be different one from the other? So within the agricultural sector, maybe, I don't know, age could be a very important dimension. So if I have a younger farmer, it's going to be different than if I have an older farmer. Maybe. But probably, the fact that this farmer has no hair or has hair is not an important dimension. The color of the eyes is probably not an important dimension. Maybe the fact that they know how to use computers, or they don't know how to use computers, or they have internet, or they don't have internet, maybe that is an important dimension. So one of the things I would like you to do is, for your target user, think about those dimensions. So we'll do a very quick exercise, and we won't ask you to draw anymore because I noticed that it's incredibly complicated for you. So just think in a first stage about different dimensions of your target users. So within the population of your target users, how would you see differences? And it's very important. It's very important here that you think about people. Don't think about organizations. Think about people. So, for example, in the tourism sector, don't think about a hotel versus a restaurant. Think about the people that work within these hotels or the restaurants. For example, in agriculture, maybe you want to choose the customer that is old, not digital, etc., because he may be the most difficult one to reach for your service. Or not. Or you say, no, I'm not even going to try and convince these older customers, so I'm going to focus on the young generation and I'm going to focus on the digital ones because I think I can build up a proposition for them. Okay? Sometimes in design, you have to choose a customer. So, for example, Volvo, at some stage when they were developing a coupe version of a car, they thought very specifically about a female driver between 30 and 40, active professionally, etc., and they designed the car with that person in mind. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody who is old, male, etc. cannot buy this car. They will and they do. But when they design the car, they have one specific type in mind. It helps make design decisions. Okay? So, what else is on here? So you will see there will be the dimensions. There will be a name. You can draw a picture, or maybe we can provide you with a picture that we will print out from the web. An age, gender, male, female, occupation, if it's relevant. Maybe it's not relevant in your case. Here you have a couple of boxes, and I will explain them very quickly. We like to make the distinction between people who are self-directed. These are people who like to do things themselves. Do-it-yourselfers. So, for example, in banking, you have a lot of people who like to work online because they like to manage everything themselves. You have people who are not so much self-directed, but they are more advice seekers. So they want advice, and then they will do something. But they are looking for advice first. And then you have the third type, which are people that say, no, I really don't want to do this. Please do it for me. And so they are delegators. Okay? That may be relevant in your case. If it's not relevant, don't fill it in. Then there are people who are early adopters, people who like to adopt new things, people who will tend to follow, not be the first ones to try something, but who will follow quite quickly. And then there are people who are very slow in take-up. Again, this may be a dimension which is interesting for you or not. And then it may be interesting to think about likely satisfaction drivers and likely dissatisfaction drivers. Okay? So think about the things that would make these people particularly happy and things that would make these people particularly unhappy. So, for example, a farmer who is always fully in control of his farm, knows everything that's going on in his farm. If you are going to develop a service for him, one of the things that you want to provide to that farmer is a sense of control. The farmer is going to be very uncomfortable if you tell him, we're going to do innovation and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's going to go this way and maybe that way and that way. And then the farmer says, no, that's not the way I work. I work, I plant, I follow, I know exactly what's going on there. And so you will have to adjust to that type of attitude. Okay? Is that clear? You think you can do this in about 15 minutes? Easy, huh? Becoming very good service designers. Maybe, Angelique, can they put up things on the wall because the desks are becoming quite full, so do you mind if they put things on the walls and the windows? We have some tape here. So I will give it first to this table. Maybe if you can put your stuff up in the right place. Otherwise your table will be kind of full.